2013. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Calling the roll, Mr. Schron.
Here.
Ms. Conwell.
Here.
Mr. Jones.
Here.
Mr. Rogers. Ms. Simon. Here. Mr. Greenspan.
Here.
Mr. Miller.
Here.
Mr. Brady.
Here.
Mr. Giovanna.
Here.
Mr. Gallagher.
Here.
And Ms. Conley.
Here.
There is a quorum.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For our moment of silence, I'd like to reflect on the life and times of former Governor John Gilligan, who passed away yesterday. He was a dedicated public service servant and has left his legacy here in Ohio. All right, moving on to item 5. I know there's a number of people signed in for public comment, and I know there's a number of people signed in for public comment regarding the County Archives building. You are welcome to deliver your comments this evening. However, that matter is going to be referred to committee. You might want to come back to the committee hearing, but you're welcome to go ahead and give your comments now. So if you want to call those people that have signed in.
If the following persons would form a line up to the podium: Tony Thomas.
And you have 3 minutes.
Michael Doherty. David Ellison. Stephen Harrison. And Bill Merriman. Oh, I'm sorry, and Kathleen Niddle.
Okay, proceed. Give us your name, and you have 3 minutes.
Name is Tony Thomas, Executive Director, Welcome House. Madam Chair, Welcome House is willing to allow additional time and opportunities for community information about the project as may be consistent with the Fair Housing Act. Last Thursday, I met with a block club that includes the Archives property. I was well received by those present, both publicly and privately. I agreed to a more complete presentation at their September meeting, at this particular block club's meeting, and I have scheduled 3 other block club meetings next week to meet with community members. And I also plan to do a presentation to the larger community at an informational meeting to be held in Ohio City on Monday, September 23rd. There are 3 particular inaccurate statements that are coming to you that need to be dispelled now. There will not be over 100 juvenile delinquents let loose in Ohio City in the neighborhood. There will be 20 carefully selected, well-behaved, well-supervised young people with developmental disabilities living in this apartment building. There will not be, point number 2, not be 18 additional apartments in the Sanford House. That's another urban legend. Such use would not be supported by either the Department of Developmental Disabilities or the County Board of Developmental Disabilities. And there will not be a need for additional 50 or 70 staff. There will be 4 staff that will be living on site. One of those staff will be the manager of this particular apartment building, and he or she will be living on site full time. There will be a need for an additional 8 spaces, in addition to those 4 staff that are living there, for staff that come and go and meet with the residents and tenants and take them out and do banking, shopping, and grocery shopping around the community. I just want to say that you're getting a lot of information about this. You're getting a lot of non-factual, inaccurate information. I'm here to tell you tonight that this project will go forward. It will be a great success. We currently operate an apartment building in Lakewood, Ohio, now, that serves 16 people with developmental disabilities, and it's been going for 7 years successfully. This project will be no less. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Come forward.
Good evening, Council. My name is Mike Doherty. I'm a resident in Ohio City. I live about 100 yards away from the Archives. I guess, first of all, I'd like to thank the Council for referring this resolution back to the Committee of the Whole. I think, obviously, the letters, the conversation, the engagement from the community that you've seen over the last handful of weeks, I think is what's driven it back to, again, further consideration. And we all look forward to further community involvement and engagement as this goes on. I guess my request to the council or to the committee of the whole, as this issue is revisited is that you treat this this opportunity to sell what's obviously a fantastic building, and you view it as if it was the sale of your own individual personal home. Meaning, why have we gotten to this place today where a bid was accepted for a lower dollar amount? Why are we here today where a bid was accepted with seemingly less secure financing? No one of you, not a single one of you would have accepted terms like that had you been selling your own home. And had your trusted advisor, a real estate agent, approached you and said you should do that, you probably would have at least initially smiled, laughed, and upon realizing some seriousness involved in that, fired them on the spot. I think this is, again, an opportunity to take advantage of the sale. The differential in the pricing, at least as I understand it, is enough to be funding 2 full-time employees for an entire year. Last time I checked, my property taxes continue to go up year after year. Maybe I'm missing something, but again, we're talking about a significant amount of dollars and some jobs that could be created. So I would, again, encourage you to think about this from a personal standpoint, much more so than just a sale of some county asset with an incremental sort of dollar amount. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dockery.
Hi, again, thank you for taking our comments tonight. I'd like to,
Please.
my name is David Ellison. I'm a resident of Ohio City. I'd like to point out that some of the things that were quoted as being misrepresentations or falsehoods were actually in the proposal that was given to you for the purchase of the properties. So if we were getting the wrong information, it was from Welcome House's proposal to you. According to recent census data, over 40% of the population of the Ohio City neighborhood of Cleveland lives at or below the poverty line. Despite problems with how the poverty line is established, this qualifies the neighborhood as one with a high concentration of poverty. The statistics have only gotten worse since the Great Recession. The concentration of poverty in our region is largely the combined result of globalization, diminished employment opportunities, suburban sprawl, the long-term effect of racial and economic segregation and the long-term effect of racial and economic segregation into public housing projects. In our case, Riverview Towers and Lakeview Terrace are within blocks of the County Archives buildings, and the proposed Welcome House Home for Developmentally Disabled Youths, 18 to 22 years of age, who are aging out of the county's foster home system. They're just blocks away from each other. There's no doubt that there's need for housing for the developmentally disabled. However, its intentional and willing placement into an area that is already regarded as having a high concentration of poverty is a violation of Section 802 of the Fair Housing Act, and it is in contradiction to the Department of Housing and Urban Development's goal to decrease the concentration of poverty and racial segregation. The Cleveland branch of the Federal Reserve Bank issued a paper on the subject of the concentration of poverty on January 31st of this year. In it, the authors cite the increase in the concentration of poverty as a, quote, distinct cause of concern because the disadvantages to an individual from being poor are thought to either be muted or amplified depending upon the poverty in the neighborhood. Neighborhoods with many poor residents typically have less access to job opportunities, face higher crime rates, and incur a range of other social problems. The solution to the problems imposed by the high concentration of poverty are not to be found in public policies that place vulnerable populations into the midst of highly concentrated poverty, or which create more housing for those requiring public assistance in those areas. Part of the solution lies in making sure that children who live in poverty receive a better education and are able to find employment. To this end, high-quality public and private school options are an absolute necessity. Another essential element is to attract more middle-class residents to Cleveland neighborhoods who can then contribute to tax revenue. I urge you not to sell the county archives to this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Stephen Harrison, and I'm a resident of Tremont in the great county of Cuyahoga. I would like to come before you briefly just to add my thoughts to the fact that these buildings are an important resource for the county of Cuyahoga in that they provide one of the few remaining real potentials for revenue to come into the county and to help individuals like Welcome House would be helping, but to help them by increasing the opportunities for revenue for the county to be able to take care of people who need it and who must have housing like that. I feel that these are two real potentials for growth in that whole area, and as that area right now is really very much a catalyst of change, and it's in transition, and this has the opportunity to either hold it back or push it forward. And I feel like those buildings with tax-paying, revenue-inducing residents would be preferable to any other option for that property. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bill Merriman. My wife and I have been Ohio City residents now for 44 years, and I've been supportive of the Franklin Clinton Block Club for well over 30 years. As the Block Club chairperson, I would like to take this opportunity to express my personal perspective on the bid by Welcome House to purchase the 2 county archives properties and the county's possible response. At our August 22nd Block Club meeting, in responding to the Cleveland Board of Zoning Appeals directive to share his plans for the archives with the community, Mr. Tony Thomas agreed. He agreed to meet with us at our next monthly meeting on September 26th. We got plenty of time. In the month ahead, members of the Franklin Clinton Block Club will visit Welcome Home sites, including the apartment building mentioned at the corner of Bunce and Detroit Avenue, adjacent to downtown Lakewood. We'll meet with some of the developmentally challenged residents who will be benefiting from this programming. The Block Club hopes to do our part to encourage and support dialogue between the city, the county, neighbors, and the leadership of Ohio City, Inc., the development corporation. Everyone in the Franklin Clinton and Ohio City community treasures this priceless historic setting, and they would insist that the site be preserved by whoever develops it. Focus on the preservation of the buildings and the county records will be a distraction at this point from the issue of the proposed sale of Welcome House and to create this 21st century support network for people with special needs. The roads in the Sanford residences were used by the original owners for only a couple generations when they were converted to an orphanage in the early 20th century. When the county sought to find an alternative to keeping juvenile offenders in the city jails, the site became our first detention home. By the time of the Great Depression, the site was now the county nursing home. The use as institution and public service continues. And when that facility moved to the vacated Fairview Hospital at 32nd and Franklin, the roads and Sanford buildings were used by the former Department of Developmental Disabilities and Retardation. Only within the past 35 years, because we're spanning so many years, only in the past 35 years has the building been used by the archives. The Franklin Clinton Block Club has a long history of working with community development opportunities within the same area. We fought to save the nearby West Side YMCA, and when the Y was closed, we worked with the developer, Mr. Sosin, who proceeded with the construction of Franklin Lofts. The last of the units are now for sale, soon to close out at $235,000. None of the services for those who are marginalized seem to have held back the influx of people with money to buy from our neighborhood.
Thank you, sir. We're going to have an opportunity to read the rest of your comments.
My name is Kathleen Niddle. I'm an Ohio City resident of many years, just a few less than Bill, and I'm the chair of the Randall Whitman John Woodbine Block Club and serve on the Ohio City Inc. board, but I am not speaking in any official capacity. Thank you for referring this matter back to committee. I would say that my main issue with the whole process, and I don't really at this point know exactly who I think you should sell it to. I am leaning one way, but you are our government, and this property is in a residential neighborhood. And we in Ohio City care about having input into what goes on in our neighborhood. And I was somewhat affronted, actually, that throughout this process, we were not consulted. We tried to have input, and we didn't have any. So I appreciate the chance that for it to go back to the committee, and I hope that you will seek meaningful community input as you continue your process of determining who should buy the property. Thank you.
Thank you, and then, of course, anyone is welcome to come back to the committee for any additional comments or submit written comments. All right, thank you. Anyone else signed in for public comment?
Yes, Madam Chair, Bruce Akers is here to speak in regards to the charter amendments. Did you want to speak now?
Madam President and Madam Vice President, distinguished members of council, on behalf of my fellow members of the Charter Review Commission, I want to thank you for all the time, effort, consideration you've given to what we proposed and sent to you in early July. I have attended most of your council meetings, and I have appreciated the dialogue and discussion that's going on and the different points of opinion that have been expressed. And we knew, of course, that not all 15 amendments were going to be put on the ballot. We appreciate that. And we understand that. But there are 3 amendments which I believe are, if I understand correctly, at this point in doubt, and because of our possible lack of the necessary 8 votes. And I requested of your chair the opportunity to make an appeal on those 3. First of all, the allocation of duties between the county prosecutor and the director of law. The Charter Review Commission feels strongly that the director of law should handle all civil litigation for the county executive, and you members of the county council. Clearly, the prosecutor would handle the criminal litigation. We are aware, of course, of this memorandum of understanding that's been under consideration for some time. But the concern we have is that an MOU is only as good and as effective as long as both sides abide by it. A future prosecutor could elect to render it null and void, and we strongly urge you to approve this amendment for the voters in the November ballot, simply because it would thereby be in place in the charter so as to avoid any future clash or disagreement between a prosecutor and a law director. Second, in reference to the justice system audit, Cuyahoga County has numerous operations that are involved in our justice system: clerk of courts, sheriff, the judiciary, the prosecutor. And the Charter Review Commission strongly believes that they should institute a regular assessment of the county's operations and involving the justice system for the purpose of achieving best practices, efficiency, and effective delivery of services for the residents of Cuyahoga County. So we urge you to put that on the ballot. And thirdly and finally, we strongly urge you to approve the amendment to establish the Inspector General Office as part of the charter, providing for its funding, structure, operations, and authority. Our concern here is that a future county executive or a future county council could decide to either kill it or kill the current ordinance or just gut it for whatever reason. In light of all that this county went through the last several decades, which led ultimately to the voters overwhelmingly supporting and adopting a charter form of government, the importance of having and preserving the Inspector General Office is clear and critical. My colleagues and I spent a long time on these, on all of these that we present you, and we strongly urge these 3 for your careful consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Akers. Anyone else?
Madam Chair, I have no other speakers.
Right. Thank you. The item 6, approval of the minutes. The minutes from the Committee of the Whole from August 13th, 2013, and the regular meeting of August 13th, 2013 are in your packet. If everyone has had an opportunity to review those minutes, I'll entertain a motion to adopt them as circulated. Is that Mr. Germana?
Second.
Moved by second by Mr. Schron. Any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Gallagher is going to abstain because he was not here. I don't have any announcements. Mr. Fitzgerald, do you have any announcements?
Just very briefly, this Friday, we're having a press conference out in North Olmsted at the Barton Bradley soccer fields having to do with the, it's the finals for the Gaelic games, which the Greater Cleveland Sports Commission, with our support, has been helpful in bringing to this area. And so I'd invite council to join me there as we, I will not be participating in any of those, despite my heritage, but I will be watching some of them, so I would invite you to do that. I also just wanted to take this moment also to thank Bruce Akers and the entire Charter Review Commission for their generous public service and their exemplary service, I think. They labored for many months and many hours, and without any compensation or reward of any kind, and probably very little thanks. So I wanted to make up for that in some small part by at least thanking them. They really worked, whether everybody agrees with all of their conclusions, they really worked, I think, in an ideal way as a very collegial body. Most of them did not know each other beforehand. And they really worked, all of the members of the commission that I talked to, and I talked to most of them, really mentioned how it could have been something that was contentious, and I think they ran an open process that was exactly what the writers of our charter had in mind. And so I just wanted to thank them, take this opportunity to thank them, and I'm sure council would join me in thanking them.
There's a rule against clapping in the meeting. And I'd also like to recognize Jim Boyle, who served as the secretary, who did an outstanding job.
I'm going to object to that, but the rest of it, he was paid.
Oh, okay.
They were not.
A lot of stress.
Thank you. That's it, Madam President.
All right, item 9, consideration of a motion of council for first reading adoption under suspension of the rules. This is an employment matter. If we could suspend the rule to waive the 3 meetings and without going to committee.
Madam President, I move to suspend the rules. Second.
Moved by Mr. Gallagher and seconded by Mr. Jimana. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. All right, Madam Clerk, you want to read it for us?
Yes, Madam Chair. Also, I'd like to recognize that Mr. Rogers has joined the meeting. Motion number 2013-0026, a motion providing for the appointment of Christina Kulik as Council Office Assistant to serve the Council of Cuyahoga County and declaring the necessity that this motion become immediately effective.
Moved by Ms. Conwell and seconded by Mr. Rogers. I think Ms. Kulik is here. Ms. Kulik is a graduate of University of Pittsburgh and also University of Dayton. She has a master's degree from the University of Dayton. She has a wide, I'm sorry, it's got the reverse. She has an undergraduate degree from Dayton and a graduate degree from the University of Pittsburgh. And she has a wide variety of experience. We went through a very extensive application process and had about 200 applications. We narrowed it down to 40. We interviewed, I believe, 9 people, and she made it to the final interview with members of council, and we welcome her to our staff. I think she's present here. I understand that you're going to have to do fight announcements on the weekend like George did. That was his part-time job, but we won't hold you to that. But you want to stand up so everyone can see you? And we welcome you. Welcome you to our staff, and you're going to have lots of challenges for you in the coming months, so welcome. Is there any other questions or discussion? Right, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Congratulations. All right, moving on to item 10, consideration of a motion of council for first reading and referral to committee.
Motion number 2013-0027, a motion confirming the county executive's reappointment of Matthew A. Charbonneau to serve on the Cuyahoga Arts and Culture Board of Trustees for the term ending March 31st, 2016, and declaring the necessity that this motion become immediately effective.
This matter will go to Human Resources, and I think this is the first time that all of these matters we have a date for the term ending, so we know specifically what period of time these people will be serving for.
Motion number 2013-0028, a motion confirming the county executive's appointment of Matt Carroll to serve on the Group Plan Commission for the term ending April 8th, 2017, and declaring the necessity that this motion become immediately effective.
This will go the Human Resources. And this Group Planning Commission actually goes back to when Tom Johnson was mayor. So it goes back to the 1920s. So it's a very, very historic board, and I'm sure Mr. Carroll will do a fine job on it.
Motion number 2013-0029, a motion confirming the county executive's appointment of various individuals to serve on the Western Reserve Area Agency on Aging Board of Trustees for the term ending January 31st, 2017, and declaring the necessity that this motion become immediately effective for the individuals as printed on the agenda, items 10C, 1 through 3.
Let's go to Human Resources. Item 11, consideration of a resolution of council for first reading under suspension of the rules. Can I have a motion to suspend the rules?
Madam President, I move to suspend the rule. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The rules are suspended.
Resolution number 2013-0184, a resolution approving an agreement governing the duties, powers, and responsibilities of the Prosecutor's Office and the Department of Law, and authorizing the Council President to execute the agreement on behalf of County Council, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Move to adopt.
Second. Moved by Mr. Sharon and seconded by Ms. Conwell. This is a matter that we have to go through. We're going to go through a step-by-step orderly process because it is somewhat complicated. There has been discussions between the county prosecutor and the law director for a number of months regarding their respective duties. To that end, they have entered into negotiations and discussions relative to what will be their respective duties. There have been a number of drafts of agreements between the two, and if this agreement is to go through, it will require my signature on behalf of the council, but I cannot sign that document unless I have the approval of the council. Now, there have been several drafts circulated to members of council, and in the last hour or so, there's been another version. And so I'm going to call on Mr. Fitzgerald or Mr. McCoof. Mr. Fitzgerald, to indicate the changes so that at this point, you're asking council to vote for an agreement that we really don't know the terms of the agreement.
And I wouldn't do that, and council shouldn't vote for something where they don't know the terms of the agreement. Just to go through a little bit of what the timeline, of course, in some ways, the negotiations over this haven't just been for the last couple months or few months between Gary Johnson on behalf of the prosecutor McGinney and law director McCloof. In some ways, negotiations have been going on maybe even before I was sworn in, because these are disputes of long standing about maybe the lack of clarity for everyone's to everyone's satisfaction anyway about the way that the charter was drafted and what the individual responsibilities are of the law department, our law department, and the county prosecutor's office. On Friday, there was a tentative agreement between Mr. McCloof on behalf of the law department and myself, Mr. Zimmerman, Rob Zimmerman, who had been retained by the county council to represent them in those discussions, and Gary Johnson, who was representing the prosecutor's office. So there was a tentative agreement which council had an opportunity to see, I had an opportunity to see, but there were some, and I had approved those, and I was in agreement with those. Now there were some last-minute requests for changes that not until this afternoon, as of this afternoon, were still unresolved. So the question would be, if we were going to just recommend to council, or if council was so inclined, whether they would put something on the ballot that then kind of sets a train in motion that's hard to stop once that happens. Or if there would be a chance that there could be a last-minute resolution, understanding that any last-minute resolution would have to be described and discussed in detail to council before we would ever ask council to vote on anything. So it's 5:30 now. I called Mr. McGinney, I believe yesterday, and said that I understood that we'd still not reached a resolution, that we should meet today. And he and I reached a tentative, well, I shouldn't say tentative. He and I reached an understanding as of about 4:30. And those changes are being reduced to writing. Now, I would say there were about 5 or so provisions that had changed over the Friday draft that council was up to speed on. Some of those are substantive. Some of those I would say were not substantive. I would say they were semantics and not really affecting a great deal of substance, but there are some substantive matters. It is being written up as we speak, and I do not see Mr. Johnson
Fitzgerald,
here yet.
would you rather us continue on
I
with
would.
the meeting and then we can come back to this?
I would. Oh, well, Mr. Johnson's here, but if you wouldn't mind, so my request, but I wanted to let
Okay.
council know why I'm asking, I'm asking for a little bit more
A number of
time.
members, I think, have comments on it. Well, why don't we go ahead with we'll move this to the end of the agenda.
That would be great.
Okay.
Thanks, Madam President.
All right, item 12, consideration of a resolution of council for first reading and referral to committee.
Resolution number 2013-0185, a resolution providing for an initial Cuyahoga County Criminal Justice Services review to ensure coordination of county efforts to provide a fair, transparent, and accountable system of justice, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
I'd like to speak to this as a sponsor and my co-sponsor, Mr. Gallagher. I know Mr. Akers spoke at some length about the charter review provision, and I had some very serious constitutional questions about the ability of the legislative branch and executive branch to review the judicial branch. And I also had concerns about funding something that could cost us estimates of $5 to $7 million. So what I've recommended and what I'm proposing is a resolution that would provide for a review, a very similar review, but reviewing the documents that already exist. We can then ascertain the cost, the manner, and if in the future this is unacceptable, we can always put this matter on the ballot. But I was extremely reluctant to enter into a fight with the court over these documents, to fund something that we had no idea how it would cost, and we had estimates of upwards of $7 million to fund the proposal as presented. So we're referring this matter as a substitute item. Mr. Gallagher, do you want to speak on that?
I think you've done a good job there.
Okay, thank you. So this,
To committee of the whole?
we're going to refer this to the public safety, okay? And public safety and justice affairs. All right, item 13, consideration of a resolution of council for third reading adoption. These are the charter review items, and we are voting on 13 of the proposed charter review items amendments. An affirmative vote of 8 council members is required to send any of these amendments to the voters. We are grateful to the hard work of the Charter Review Commission, and particularly Mr. Akers and his staff for this particularly difficult job over as many months. Council has taken many of the Charter Review Commission's recommendations as substituted. So what happened is when the charter provides that if the Charter Review Commission gave us a particular recommendation, if we changed one word, it became a different item. So we actually had some minor changes with some of them, so we actually substituted our own, but this with the same intent. Council has also offered substantive edits to some of the original recommendation edits which council believes are practical and clarifying. As we vote this evening on each amendment, I am aware that not all council members will necessarily agree on the substance of every amendment. Some members are concerned about the number of ballot issues to be placed before the voters this fall. Some amendments are not time sensitive and may readily be brought back for consideration in the coming years. Some amendments may have been referred to council with only a majority vote and not the 8 votes necessary to be placed on the ballot. The staff has prepared for us a summary sheet that has prioritized some of these amendments. So we'll be going through these and we will be taking a roll call vote on each one. Right? So let's start and work through them.
Okay, resolution number 2013-0136, a resolution providing for the submission to the electors of the County of Cuyahoga an amendment to Article 6, Section 6.02 of the Charter of Cuyahoga County, clarifying the role of the Board of Revision and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Move to adopt.
Moved by Mr. Miller and seconded by Mr. Germana. All right, does anyone have any comments on this, Mr. Schrein?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I will be supporting this, and I will be supporting 7 of the 13, just to put that, and I won't repeat that every time. The no votes are not necessarily on the content as much as I agree with the President's comments as to the quantity that will be appearing. Though I am supporting 7, I don't know that all my colleagues will support the same 7, but I think that that's probably the maximum amount that would be appropriate to have on the ballot, only because of the longevity or the length of the ballot that it might go into. So I will be supporting this particular one, and I'll be supporting 6 others.
All right, any other comment, Mr. Miller?
Madam President and my colleagues, this amendment corrects seriously deficient charter language that confused the Board of Revision with the hearing boards and created a lot of administrative uncertainty. The amendment defines the composition of the administrative board, clarifies administrative authority, ensures hiring of board members based on job-relevant qualifications, and will save taxpayer dollars by enabling the Board of Revision to tailor the number of hearing boards and their terms to changes in workload. A year and a half of thought, discussion, and revision went into this amendment, both at Council and the Charter Review Commission. This amendment passed unanimously at both the Charter Review Commission and the Committee of the Whole, and I urge the support of my colleagues.
Any other questions? So just to repeat, a yes vote would vote to place it on the ballot. A no vote would vote to not to place it on the ballot. And I just want to make it clear to the folks here, there will be no votes on, I'll be voting no on some of these, not because I disagree with the item, but because I don't feel it's sufficiently time sensitive that we have an opportunity to place this on the ballot at some future point. Some of these things don't even take effect for a number of years, so there's no reason to have that lengthy ballot when we can do it in the years to come. All right, so you want to start, any other questions? We can call the roll on item, yes, I'm sorry. Anybody else, Tanya?
Madam President, I did have a concern about the allocation of the duties for the law department. Will that one be pushed back as well?
No, we're going to come back. We're just going to bring that back on the agenda. Oh, yeah, okay, I see what you're saying. Well, we can push that one back, too. Okay. I think that's it's near the end, so, okay. All right, anything else on the Board of Revision? Madam Clerk, you call the roll.
Calling the roll on Resolution 2013-0136. Mr. Schron?
Yes.
Ms. Conwell? Yes. Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Ms. Simon? Yes. Mr. Greenspan?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Germana? Yes. Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
And Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
All right, this item will be placed on the ballot. Item 0137.
Resolution number 2013-0137, a resolution providing for the submission to the electors of the County of Cuyahoga an amendment to Article 3, Section 3.105 of the Charter of Cuyahoga County, specifying actions of council that do not require executive approval to be binding, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Miller and seconded by Mr. Schron. Very briefly, this item amends the charter to change a procedure that probably was put in inadvertently. So for instance, if council adopts rules, as it is now, the executive has to sign those. The executive can't veto our rules, whatever we're an independent branch of government, so whatever we adopt as, say, our rules or procedures. So this would just correct that, that part of the charter.
Madam President.
Mr. Miller.
To my colleagues, current charter language fails to recognize that some actions of council are not allowed to or should not be required to be submitted to the executive for approval or disapproval. The amendment creates a list of 10 items for which council action is sufficient, including creating council's rules and schedule, setting council's organizational structure, hiring council staff, contracting for services for the council office, making appointments delegated to council, confirming executive appointments, exercising council's investigatory powers, and submitting charter amendments to the voters. As stated in Joanne Gross's staff analysis, the amendment enhances council's independence and clarifies separation of powers issues. The amendment also has been well vetted over a year and a half's time and passed unanimously at both the Charter Review Commission and Committee of the Whole, and I ask for the support of my colleagues.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, call the roll.
Calling the roll on Resolution 2013-0137. Mr. Schron?
Yes.
Ms. Conwell?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers? Ms. Simon?
Yes.
Mr. Greenspan? Mr. Miller? Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Germana?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
The motion carries unanimously.
All right, this item we placed on the ballot.
Resolution number 2013-0139, a resolution providing for the submission to the electors of the County of Cuyahoga an amendment to Article 3, Section 3.03 of the Charter of Cuyahoga County, preventing the disqualification of a council member from serving the full term to which the member has been elected due to redistricting, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Move to adopt.
Moved by Mr. Schron and seconded by Ms. Conwell. Any comment on this? Mr. Miller?
Madam Chair and my colleagues, I totally support the concept of this amendment, but the next redistricting will not be until 2020. So in deference to concerns about the number of issues on the ballot, I am going to vote to defer this to another year.
And Mr. Miller took my speech. So I totally agree. Anything else? Mr. Brady?
I also concur with Councilman Miller's.
Yeah, this is something that is not time sensitive. We got plenty of time, so we can do this at a future date. All right, anybody else? Going to call the roll?
Calling the roll on Resolution number 2013-0139. Mr. Schron?
No.
Ms. Conwell?
No.
Mr. Jones?
No.
Mr. Rogers? No. Ms. Simon? No. Mr. Greenspan? No. Mr. Miller?
No.
Mr. Brady?
No.
Mr. Germana?
No.
Mr. Gallagher?
No.
Ms. Conley?
No.
The motion was defeated unanimously.
All right, this matter will not be placed on the ballot at this time.
Resolution number 2013-0140, a resolution providing for the submission to the electors of the County of Cuyahoga an amendment to Article 2, Section 2.01 of the Charter of Cuyahoga County, requiring any candidate for election as county executive be an elector of the county for at least 2 years immediately prior to filing of the declaration of candidacy, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Move to adopt.
Moved by Mr. Schron and seconded by Ms. Conwell. I assume Mr. Miller has comments? Or-
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I consider this amendment also not to be time sensitive, and also it appears to me that there are not enough votes for the next one on executive vacancy and succession, and there could be a problem about the requirement for if you get appointed to be executive, if we in the future develop a process to do that as we talk about in this next amendment. And so we might do well to hold off on this until we see what happens with the broader question of executive vacancy and succession, which is related.
Yeah, I understand why the charter was written that way, because the council people had to live for 2 years, but we could have someone that just moved in and run for county executive. So I agree with the concept, but it's not time sensitive. Deal with this some future date. All right, any other discussion? All right, Madam Clerk, you call the roll?
Calling the roll on Resolution 2013-0140. Mr. Schron?
No.
Ms. Conwell? No. Mr. Jones?
No.
Mr. Rogers? No. Ms. Simon? No. Mr. Greenspan? No. Mr. Miller?
No.
Mr. Brady?
No.
Mr. Germana? No. Mr. Gallagher?
No.
Lee? No. Defeated unanimously.
Okay, item 0143.
Resolution number 2013-0143, a resolution providing for the submission to the electors of the County of Cuyahoga, an amendment to Article 2, Section 2.04, vacancy of the executive of the county charter, requiring the county executive to designate a successor and more clearly specify the order of succession in case of a vacancy, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Move to adopt.
Moved by Mr. Miller and seconded by Ms. Conway. Any discussion on this item?
Madam President.
Yes, Mr. Miller.
I actually like this amendment and going to vote for it, but my reading of the tea leaves is it's probably not going to pass. But for the public's knowledge, what this amendment does is create an option where the executive could designate one of the Article 5 cabinet officers as his or her successor in the event of a vacancy, and that designation would be subject to the approval of council. Currently, the charter provides for the president of council to automatically succeed as the executive in the event of a vacancy, and there may be times where that works perfectly, and there may be other times where the president of council is really not in a position to make that move.
All right, any other questions or comments?
Madam President, I think the other problem as it exists now, if the succession goes to the president, in case the president doesn't want it, they potentially lose their seat as a council member. So I think that's a problem as it reads now. We talked about that. So I think that's...
Yeah, it's a very, very complicated problem, and since Mr. Fitzgerald is obviously very healthy, and we don't have to face this problem. So, but so I think that's something that we need to work out the details of. There was a lot of discussion on this at the last meeting. I mean, at the committee meeting regarding this. All right, call the roll.
Calling the roll on Resolution 2013-0143. Mr. Schron?
No.
Ms. Conwell?
No.
Mr. Jones?
No.
Mr. Rogers?
No.
Ms. Simon?
no.
Mr. Greenspan?
No.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
No.
Mr. Germana?
No.
Mr. Gallagher?
No.
And Ms. Conley?
No.
The motion is defeated, 1 yay to 10 nays.
Okay, moving on to item 0144, council vacancies.
Resolution number 2013-0144, resolution providing for the submission to the electors of the County of Cuyahoga, an amendment to Article 3, Section 3.07, vacancies and length of appointment of council, clarifying the length of appointment should a vacancy in the council arise, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Move to adopt.
Moved by Mr. Schron and seconded by Ms. Conwell.
Madam President.
Yes, Mr. Miller.
Having voted down the previous item, executive and council vacancies, the language might not be aligned if we proceed, and so I think we should defer.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Right, call the roll.
Calling the roll on resolution number 2013-0144. Mr. Strawn?
No.
Ms. Conwell?
No.
Mr. Jones?
No.
Mr. Rogers?
No.
Ms. Simon?
No.
Mr. Greenspan?
No.
Mr. Miller?
No.
Mr. Brady?
No.
Mr. Germana?
No.
Gallagher? And Ms. Conley? The motion is unanimously defeated.
Okay, item 10145.
Resolution number 2013-0145, a resolution providing for the submission to the electors of the County of Cuyahoga an amendment to Article 11, adding Section 11.05, Performance Audit of Cuyahoga County's Justice System, requiring the county executive to appoint a board or university to conduct a performance audit of the Cuyahoga County Justice System, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Move to adopt.
Moved by Mr. Schrein and seconded by Ms. Conwell. Any discussion on this item? Mr. Schrein.
Thank you, Madam President. I think that the merits of this are certainly there, but I do not believe that this is the appropriate vehicle to be used to be doing this. I think that the suggestions that were brought forth by the Charter Review Commission to be looking into this have certainly brought some light onto this, as a lot of the other elements, but I think that the suggestion of Council President and where we're going with the ordinance, I think will give us the ability and perhaps the tools to do this if we find that in the future that we don't get the cooperation for the public's benefit, that we could come back and revisit this at a later time. But I will defer on the positive side. That being said, there will be 3 other items that I will be supporting that are in the area of protection and security, and I will be supporting those, which I don't see this as one of the ones in which falls into that category.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, in addition to the comments I made about the other resolution, I was supplied by the court with a stack literally that thick of reports that they already produce, which are already online, which are available to the public. And then there's another whole set of reports that they have to adopt as of the coming, I think, September, October. The Supreme Court is really the one who audits the justice system. And so I'm satisfied with the amount of materials that we already have, that we're getting a clear picture of the courts and how it operates. So I don't see the necessity of mandating something that, as I said, we don't know how much it's going to cost over the coming years. And if you decide, if you want to decide you want to spend $6 or $7 million every year, because we don't know, it just says justice system. Does that mean we start from the police department, every police department in the county, all the way through every municipal court? It's just too vague. So we're going to be concentrating on the common police court with the reports, and it's going to be supervised by our internal auditor who has experience, and we already have the staff on board for that. So it'll be cost effective and come up with the same results.
Madam President?
Yes.
While all that is true, I don't think there's been a court system in the state of Ohio, most possibly the United States, that hasn't had a performance audit. What a performance audit's going to do is going to tell you, how many secretaries do you need? Do we have enough? Do we have enough judges? The population of Cuyahoga County has steadily gone downhill, but the amount of seats and justices that have been put on the bench has steadily gone up. The amount of personnel in the courts has steadily gone up. I just did a study on the Juvenile Justice Center. Since the late 1800s, all we have done is go up in the amount of justices on the court, justifiably so with the amount of cases that came up. But when the amount of cases came up and the population went down, the amount of judges went up, and surprisingly, not to me, the amount of magistrates quadrupled. So a performance audit will justify the expenses that the court spends to the taxpayers, who ultimately are the bosses. And we sit here on this panel, as do the judges and the courts throughout the state of Ohio and the United States, at the pleasure of the people. And the people are those that pay for the justice system itself. So I think it's a great idea to do a performance audit, which has never been done.
Madam President? People also recognize the importance of in a constitution and separation of powers, to which a performance audit authorized by this council would violate. So I think the rule of law supersedes any notion about what the people want. I think the Constitution and the rule of law needs to govern, and if there needs to be some type of audit done, maybe it will be done in a different fashion.
And that's what we have with our proposed resolution, that will be done in a different fashion. So we're actually carrying out the mandate that the Charter Review Commission had, but in a different form. Any other questions, comments? Call the roll.
Calling the roll on Resolution 2013-0145. Mr. Schron?
No.
Ms. Conwell?
No.
Mr. Jones?
No.
Mr. Rogers?
No.
Ms. Simon?
No.
Mr. Greenspan? No. Mr. Miller?
No.
Mr. Brady?
No.
Mr. Germana?
No.
Mr. Gallagher?
No.
Ms. Conley?
No.
The motion is unanimously defeated.
All right, moving on to item 0158, Personnel Review Commission.
Resolution number 2013-0158, a resolution providing for the submission to the electors of the County of Cuyahoga an amendment to Article 2, Section 2.0312, Powers and Duties, and Article 9, Sections 9.01 through 9.05, and to add Section 9.06, renaming the Human Resource Commission, changing the appointing authority, clarifying its powers and duties, and establishing an office of the Director of Human Resources, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Schron and seconded by Ms. Conwell. Any Mr. Miller?
Madam President and my colleagues, this is a very important amendment that I strongly recommend. It, first of all, renames the Human Resources Commission to the Personnel Review Board to distinguish it from the Human Resources Department. It clarifies the duties of the Personnel Review Board. It makes the Director of Human Resources a charter position appointed by the executive subject to confirmation by council. And it also provides for council appointment of the Personnel Review Board to provide greater independence in the employee grievance process. This is one of the 4 amendments that Joanne Gross in the staff analysis identified as both important and time sensitive, that we should move ahead on now, and I ask for the support of my colleagues. Thank you.
All right, any additional comments? Mr. Schron?
This is one of the 3 that I believe fall into, we have categories of mechanical fixes to the charter that we think were, some of which would be addressed. There are those that I believe fall into protection, security, and cross-checks. This is one of those, along with the sheriff and the inspector general, which I urge my colleagues that if you support one, I think you should be supporting all 3, because I think they provide that cross-check and benefits to the populace that they were expecting when this charter form of government came into play. Thank you.
Madam President? I'm going to support this particular item, and I want to thank Councilwoman Conwell here, who spent many months advocating for this particular piece. So I'll be voting in favor.
Mr. Greenspan?
Great, thank you. I too will be supporting this. The one truly attractive component to this, which I believe has caused some consternation between our employees, is the perception of the independence of the HRC itself. And I believe since council has no employees, which will be subject to the Human Resource Commissioner, the new commission as it's named, we serve as a perfect appointing authority to provide that level of security to the employees. Their grievances will be held in a free and unbiased fashion. So that's the primary component that attracts me to support this. and I too support I encourage my colleagues to support.
Chairperson.
Mr. Brady?
There are elements of this that I like. I don't consider it to be time sensitive. I'll be voting undoubtedly in the minority when I cast my vote against this. I'd like to revisit this to potentially put it on the ballot next year, but the way I count the votes, it'll be on the ballot this year.
Thank you. Anyone else?
And Madam President, I'll be supporting this as well. The check and balance is needed. We've gained a greater level of efficiency under our new government, but creating a greater level of independence in certain areas is important, and this speaks to that matter, and I will be supporting it.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Madam Chair, I'm going to be supporting this, but you know, I want to say that this has nothing to do with the current administration or the current commission. It's just the appearance, and if we could clarify this and give greater confidence to the employees, I think we should go ahead and do it.
Thank you. All right, call the roll.
Calling the roll on resolution number 2013-0158. Mr. Schron?
Yes.
Ms. Conwell?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Ms. Simon?
Yes.
Mr. Greenspan?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
No.
Mr. Germana?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
No.
Ms. Conley? Yes. The motion carries 9 to 2.
Thank you. Item 0159.
Resolution number 2013-0159, a resolution providing for the submission to the electors of the County of Cuyahoga an amendment to Article 2, Section 2.032 of the Charter of Cuyahoga County relating to the appointment authority of the county executive and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Move to adopt.
Moved by Mr. Schrein and seconded by Mr. Miller. Comments on this? I think this is a very, very important item because it gives the council 60 days in order to do confirmations. The 30 days was really a very, very short period of time, particularly if items came in around holidays. And it was actually a detriment to some of the people appointed. If they were on vacation or away, it was difficult to get them in. Even if council was here, sometimes we couldn't get the applicants in. So this gives us an opportunity, a little bit more time to get people in, have a complete hearing, and determine whether or not we're going to confirm someone. All right, call the roll.
Calling the roll on Resolution 2013-0159. Mr. Schron?
Yes.
Ms. Conwell?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Ms. Simon?
Yes.
Mr. Greenspan?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Germana?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher? And Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
The next item has to do with the law department. It's contingent on our other one, so let's hold this to the end and let's go through, and then we'll go back to Mr. Fitzgerald for an explanation about the agreement and come back to this item. So we can move on to 0161.
Resolution number 2013-0161, a resolution providing for the submission to the electors of the County of Cuyahoga an amendment to Article 12, Section 12.09 of the Charter of Cuyahoga County, adjusting the timeline for the appointment process and the commencement of the term of the Charter Review Commission for the year in which the appointment is made, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Move to adopt.
Second.
All right, moved by Mr. Schrein and seconded by, I guess Mr. Miller was a little bit louder. Any discussion on this one?
Madam President.
Yes.
To my colleagues, this amendment has to do with the appointment of the Charter Review Commission, which doesn't take place again until 2017. And I know that the conventional wisdom is that this is not time sensitive, but this is a very simple, straightforward amendment that is a clear improvement, and I don't think it's going to have create any problem with anything else having this item on the ballot, and that we ought to just go ahead and do it and get it out of the way. And so I recommend moving ahead on this. It was unanimously approved by both the Charter Review Commission and the Committee of the Whole. Thank you.
Mr. Brady?
Chairperson, this particular proposal is completely rational. I'm sure it will be eventually adopted. I would hope that the council would not put an additional charter amendment that is not necessary on the ballot this fall, and therefore I will be voting no.
And just to reiterate, Mr. Brady, on that, with the number of items that are going to be on the ballot, it's going to be a sale message that we have to make sure that we're selling each one of these, and rather than having a focus on one that's not time sensitive, I think that though it's perfunctory and should be approved, I suggest we push it off to a later ballot, and I will not be supporting it.
Okay, any other comments? All right, call the roll.
Calling the roll on Resolution 2013-0161. Mr. Schron?
No.
Ms. Conwell?
No.
Mr. Jones?
No.
Mr. Rogers?
No.
Ms. Simon? No. Mr. Greenspan? No. Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
No.
Mr. Germana?
No.
Mr. Gallagher?
No.
And Ms. Conley? No. The motion is defeated 1-10.
Okay, item 0162.
Resolution number 0162, a resolution providing for the submission to the electors of the County of Cuyahoga an amendment to Article 5, Section 5.01, appointment and confirmation of officers, and Section 5.08, sheriff, powers, duties, and qualifications, establishing the term of appointment and process of removal of the sheriff, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Move to adopt.
Moved by Mr. Schron and seconded by Ms. Conwell. Any discussion on this item?
Madam President? Yes. This is one of the three items in addition to the Personnel Review Commission and the Inspector General that I believe brings that element of independence that is sought for. And I think that as we go forward in the county with moving forward in Charter Review Commission's recommendations, that we adopt this, and I urge my colleagues to support this.
Madam President?
Yes, Mr. Miller.
I totally support the concept of this amendment, but I have two concerns about proceeding immediately. First is that because of the recent transition in the sheriff's office, I think the discussion may center around personal factors rather than the substance. And I also have heard concerns expressed about the removal process that's created in this amendment that would probably create a very public and divisive process. And if we take some additional time, we may be able to find a better way to do that. So for that reason, I'm going to vote to defer.
Mr. Greenspan?
Great, thank you, Madam President. I'll be supporting this position, and for a few reasons. Number one, we are the only county in the state that has an appointed sheriff, and I believe that the eyes of what happens here and how we proceed today will be looked upon that community, but also throughout the other counties throughout the state as charter forms of government. I believe will be more of the rule on a going forward basis. The sheriff, just like the Inspector General, currently has investigative authority, and I believe to be able to separate and to ensure that the positions, as we did with the Inspector General, the removal is as it's presented here. The appointment is by the executive, confirmation of council. The removal is a similar process. The internal auditor is another function that has investigative authorities, but that is purely within the authority of council. Once again, I believe that those two, the Inspector General, the Internal Auditor, because of their independence in nature and because of the investigative authority that the sheriff has, should be as prescribed in this proposed charter amendment, and I would urge my colleagues to support it. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, Madam Council President. I think that there is a very worthy discussion about the independence of the county sheriff in our new form of government. I was one of the issues that I thought was a weak element in the charter as it was proposed in 2009. However, I'm not convinced that this is the way to go about this, or that the timing is the right time. I'd like to revisit this for next year's ballot, so I'll be voting no.
All right, anyone, any other? All right, call the roll.
Calling the roll on Resolution 2013-0162. Mr. Schron?
Yes.
Ms. Conwell?
No.
Mr. Jones? No. Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Ms. Simon?
No.
Mr. Greenspan?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
No.
Mr. Brady?
No.
Mr. Germana?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
And Ms. Conley?
No.
The vote is 5 yeas to 6 nays, so the motion is defeated.
Okay, so we do not have 8 votes to place it on the ballot, so it's defeated. All right. Item 0164.
Resolution number 2013-0164, a resolution providing for the submission to the electors of the County of Cuyahoga an amendment adding Article 14, Section 14.01 of the Charter of Cuyahoga County, establishing the agency of Inspector General in the Charter, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Move to adopt.
Moved by Mr. Schrein, seconded by Ms. Conwell.
Madam President?
Mr. Schrein.
Thank you, Madam President. This item is one which goes to the core of the charter change itself. I think this goes right to the heart of why every single precinct, every single voting block in the entire county of Cuyahoga voted to support the charter change. If you look at the core of that Charter Review Commission, this was at the last meeting referred to by Mr. Akers as their number one thing they wanted to see on the ballot. The county executive stood before us and said that he was in support of the IG being put on the ballot. It was only 2.5 years ago plus that we were facing the change from the corruption and all of the ramifications that had for our county. Today, we have an ordinance that has approved an IG. That's only as good and only lasts as long as the council should not change that. I spent 28 years in the United States Army. One of the things that brought that sense of independence was the independent IG that came in whenever they were inspecting and whenever they were checking out anyone. Everyone received the same protection and everyone received the same level of scrutiny, irrespective of who they were, what they were doing, what their background was, so that it helped to address those concerns that we have as we took forth our new office 2.5 years ago. The IG, being independent, will provide that protection, and by putting it into the charter form of government, it will protect it not only for the actions of that IG, but it'll protect it from future councils trying to say that perhaps this is not as important as it was 2.5 years ago when we took these offices. We put this charter in the form of a government. The IG protection will not only last today, but it will last in the future. By adopting what's on this language, it will still allow us to put forth the operational rules that some of the council members are concerned about. but it will codify it into the charter forever, which is where this belongs. Thank you.
Mr. Greenspan?
Great, thank you. As my colleagues know from the first meeting we had right after the Monday, our election, I was told actually to stop bringing up the concept of the Inspector General because everybody got the position I was coming from. In May of 2010, I proposed as a candidate a charter amendment, first an ordinance and then a charter amendment. And in looking, and as my committee members know from the first 2 years, we had extensive debate about the concept of the Inspector General, had a long phone conversation with the Inspector General from Miami-Dade County to explain the concept of independence, not only from a reporting perspective, but from a fiscal perspective. The concept of an Inspector General obviously is one that I've advocated prior to my election and through to today, and will continue to do so. As other states, and we're the only county in the state of Ohio that has a county-wide Inspector General, as other states have put their legislation forward, it is as specific, if not more specific, than the original charter amendment that the Charter Review Commission presented to us, which had some of these very mission-critical perspectives. As Councilmember Schron said, the proposal that's before us codifies the concept in perpetuity or until the electorate, if this should pass, chose to remove it from the charter, but at least provides the assurance that the independent agency of an Inspector General be in place. Now, an agency is different, as we know, than a board and a commission in that it is independent. We have somewhat made it independent through ordinance. This will do this through a charter amendment and make it permanent. The original tenets of independence have to do with fiscal independence to ensure that the budget is codified. This does not do that, but at least it advances the discussion and allows this council the ability to get comfortable with the concept of an Inspector General if that is still needed in some of my colleagues' minds. With that said, I would have preferred the stronger of the two, but I support this because this keeps the discussion moving and allows the elector to decide what level of independence and what level of investigation they wish to have placed on their government. So I would encourage my colleagues' support on this. Thank you.
Mr. Brady?
Yes, thank you. Madam Council President. I remember those long discussions in the Rules Committee. It seems like only 2.5 years ago. It seemed like it lasted 2.5 years as well. I have become converted, not overnight, but over a period of time to this issue, the positive reasons to have an IG. I would support this being on the ballot next November. And in order to keep the ballot as short as possible, I'll be voting no on this resolution.
I'll be voting no on this resolution, not because I have any lack of support of the Office of the Inspector General. I think the Inspector General's position is very important. But I continue to have questions regarding due process for employees. I continue to have questions about the cost of this office. I think that the office is operating, and I'd like to see it continue to operate for another year so that there may be some adjustments that council would have to make regarding it. So I just believe that in addition to the fact that it's something that we can put on the ballot next year, I don't believe this is time sensitive, and I'd like to see the Inspector General continue to operate so that we can see the end results of some of the investigations, how the process goes. I continue to be concerned about the rights of individual employees who are subjected to the investigations. If your name is mentioned in an Inspector General's report and you did absolutely nothing wrong, it's really very detrimental. So I'd just like to see that continue, but I'll be voting no on it.
Madam President, I'm going to support this this charter amendment for the reason that this office has, over the past 2.5 years, proven its worthiness and essentialness in the functioning of our county government. We've all seen the reports of the Inspector General and the benefits this office has brought to us. In terms of this particular item, I can support it because of its simplicity. it's simple enough to maintain the office, but yet it's able, the council, to determine the balance that needs to be struck between having an office and an office that doesn't become too bloated as a large bureaucracy with overzealous investigations and jeopardizing our employees' due process, as the president has mentioned. So for those reasons, I am going to support this and hope that this carries.
Madam President.
Okay, well, we go Mr. Jermaine and then Mr. Miller.
Madam Chair, to me, this is a no-brainer. For the last 2.5 years, anytime I've been invited to speak to community group, I've always brought up the Inspector General as one of the greatest things that this government has done. I think, you know, it's kind of ridiculous. The corruption scandal is 2.5 years ago. There's still convicted felons that are not in jail. What was 50 or 60 different people were prosecuted, and people had to know what was going on, but I don't think any employee had confidence of reporting any wrongdoing. And the confidentiality that's guaranteed by the Inspector General, I think is so important, because if someone's saying something done is wrong, go to an Inspector General, keep it confidential. And so since I've been tooting the horn, so to speak, as to what this government accomplished in setting up the Inspector General, I think it's just a natural confidence builder in the new government to have the people ratify it.
Madam President.
Mr. Miller.
I strongly support putting Inspector General language in the charter at the right time. The problem is that we're just not there on language. I agree with Councilman Greenspan that in this very short version that there are more things that need to be there. There needs to be something about the removal process. Otherwise, we could provide by ordinance that it takes 8 votes to remove the Inspector General, and then it could be changed at any time by vote of 6, and probably something on the budget guarantee as well. So I think we should, with something as important as amending the charter, we should take the time to get it right the first time and not do a first step and a second step later. So I think we need more time on this.
I agree.
Madam President,
Jones.
I'll be voting no as well. I certainly support the Inspector General's office. I certainly supported and sponsored the debarment legislation to give our Inspector General the tool to bar those companies involved in wrongdoing, and again, to provide opportunities to the honest, hardworking companies in this county. So it was a vital tool to this office, and I continue to support it. But I think it is still growing, it's still evolving, and I'm not prepared to cement it in just yet until, but it's certainly something I'll be willing to look at in a year.
All right, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Calling the roll on resolution number 2013-0164. Mr. Schron?
Yes.
Ms. Conwell?
No.
Mr. Jones? No. Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Ms. Simon?
Yes.
Mr. Greenspan?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
No.
Mr. Brady?
No.
Mr. Germana?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
And Ms. Conley?
No.
Vote is 6-5, 6 yeas and 5, but in order to go on the ballot, it needs 8. So the motion carries, but it's defeated.
Okay, now, let's go back to, on the agenda, to item, let me get the right number. On the agreement for the, what is it? Okay, item 160. We're gonna hold the one on the charter until we get the explanation of the agreement from Mr. Fitzgerald. Okay? So we want to go back to the item where we voting as to whether or not to sign the agreement.
Item number 11A, Resolution 2013-0184, page
you.
2.
So, Madam President, I would ask Gary Johnson if Gary, are you here? I'd ask Gary and Majid to come up and go through the portions that have changed since Friday, and any other questions they might be able to
Okay, and
answer.
then just to clarify, then a vote on this would allow me to sign this agreement on behalf of council. So we're back on item 11A, and the rules are suspended already.
Actually, is the council familiar with what last copy do you have?
Why don't you can go through it briefly? I think it's been circulated.
Because to make sense that everybody, because there was the copy that was signed and the revisions from that. Basically, the parameters of the agreement are as follows. The law department will do all the transactional work for the county, all the contracts, all the debt issuance documents, construction, all of that stuff is in the law department. There is a provision and the final approval as to legal form and correctness is in the law department. There is a provision which is provided to the county as a service, not as a legal requirement, but as a service to the county, which is when contracts are submitted to the appropriate contracting approval authority, that we would send a copy electronically of the agendas basically to the prosecutor's office. And the intent for that is not really the merits of the contract or anything of that nature, but if there is a conflict of interest issue or a criminal issue, for instance, if the prosecutor is about to indict a contractor that we have no idea was winning the bid and we're about to go enter into contract with them, it gives the prosecutor an ability to warn us about that potential, hey, there's they can't obviously disclose grand jury, but basically let us know that there is an issue with this contractor. That goes along with the debarment procedures that we have. It makes sense. We put a specific 3 calendar days limitation on it, so the intent is not to be able to delay the contracts or anything of that nature, but it's to give us a warning of that possibility.
And to add to that is right now the prosecutor's office gets them after they're already negotiated. They've been signed by the vendor rather than up front. And a lot of times this, it's thought that it's better to get that notification and find out if there's a problem ahead of time. And it'll also expedite the contracts themselves. And there's been an agreement worked out in order to facilitate that.
In terms of the division of duties, it is as follows. The prosecutor would represent the courts. Of course, except in the contracts, because the contracting authority is the county. The court is not a contracting entity. And the county had always done the labor negotiations for the court, so that would stay with the law department. But like writs of habeas writs of habeas or anything of that nature, against the courts, would be done by the prosecutor's office. The prosecutor's office would continue to represent the independent boards and commissions. So, go ahead.
Also, too, with the labor issues with regard to the courts would also stay with the law department.
Yeah.
In addition to that.
Yeah. The court the prosecutor would represent the Board of Elections, the libraries and library boards, not the county's law library. The county's law library is with the law department, but the Cuyahoga County Library and the other libraries, the Board of Health, the Metro Health Board of Trustees, the Board of Developmental Disabilities, the Alcohol, Drug Addiction, Mental Health Services, the Veterans Service Commission, the Soldiers and Sailors Monument Board of Trustees, the Soil and Water Conservation District, the Community-Based Corrections Facilities Governing Board, the County Budget Commission, and the Human Resource Commission in all matters, including litigation. The prosecutor's office will also continue to represent the townships. We've never claimed any right to represent the townships, so that continues with the prosecutor's office. With respect to the county entities, the prosecutor's office in Health and Human Services gets to continue doing the work on enforcement, child support, all the quasi-criminal and the enforcement proceedings that happen in Health and Human Services. This was a sticking issue, but I think the final agreement that they reached is that DCFS was carved out, that goes into the prosecutor's office, that all the litigation in DCFS goes to the prosecutor's office. That's a deviation from the agreement, the original agreement. But obviously the labor and employment litigation in DCFS would stay in the law department. The purchasing would stay in the law department. The issue that we were having was if the county is sued for a liability out of an enforcement matter or something of that nature, we had viewed that as a liability issue that should be in the law department, but this agreement keeps it in the prosecutor's office. The law department has the ability to serve as consulting lawyers, but the primary litigators on that matter would be in the prosecutor's office.
And in conjunction with this agreement, as you notice, who is primary, it also allows either the prosecutor or the county to be a consulting lawyer on that case if they so chose to do so in a lot of these matters. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, with respect to the law department, the law department shall advise and represent the county of Cuyahoga, the county executive, the county council, the inspector general, the charter review commission, the departments, agencies, offices, employees, boards, and other authorities responsible to the county council or to the county executive on all legal matters, including labor negotiations and litigation, unless there's a specific provision otherwise in the agreement. And obviously, with respect to the court, we said that on their labor and contract matters, that would be in the law department. Now, on litigation in court, the way it works is on the matters that are within the law department. The law department appears as the primary litigators, as the decision makers, and as the primary lead counsel who are responsible for the management of the entire case. The prosecutor's office has the ability to appear as a consulting attorney on the litigation, but they can't obviously guide the litigation. They appear in a consulting capacity. The idea is if there is somebody in the prosecutor's office who has more experience on a matter than the law department, they can appear on the matter in a consulting capacity to the lawyers in the law department. But the people who are leading the litigation, doing the litigation, calling the shots, deciding who to depose, who not to depose, doing everything would be in the law department. And that would be for all the county offices, and for all the county offices, departments, agencies, and authorities responsible to the county executive and the council, such as the fiscal, medical examiner, clerk of courts, public works, law, treasurer, sheriff, economic development, health and human services, of course, except the provision on DCFS that we talked about. The sheriff, the public safety and justice affairs department, the information technology department, the communication department, the county law library, the charter review commission, the county planning commission, and the solid waste district. Those are in the law department, and the prosecutor can serve on these matters in a consulting capacity. However, there were litigation within the county that is under the authority of the county executive and county council, where the reverse happens, where the prosecutor is the primary litigator, and that is for law enforcement related litigation at the sheriff department and at the medical examiner's department. If we have a detainee who's injured or who the Levert case, for instance, that would be in the prosecutor's office as the primary litigators, and the law department is the consulting litigators. Although in this case, it's always, when the law department is the consulting litigators, by definition, there's going to be more involvement because you have the settlement issues that belong to the client. So there is a need for a little bit more involvement. Now, I think I said everything on the medical examiner and the sheriff. The Board of Revision, the law department would handle all the employment matters on the Board of Revision, the contractual matters, the retention of the hearing officers, but the actual tax appeals and the tax advice in the Board of Revision would remain with the prosecutor's office. So the prosecutor's office would handle the complaints and the appeal of those complaints to the Board of Tax Appeals, and from there to the Supreme Court. Foreclosure in the Treasury Department, that would remain in the prosecutor's office. The public defender would remain represented by the prosecutor's office, but if there's a conflict, there is a provision for coordination between the law department and the prosecutor's office to cooperate on those matters. Now, obviously, labor matters have always historically been done by the county for the public defender's office. So we do all their labor negotiations, and that continues to be the case under this agreement. For workers' compensation, the county obviously has a system where we have a third-party administrator, and we administer the workers' compensation claims. That remains the same. It remains with the county. It's a contract out of the Human Resource Department. But when the workers' compensation claims get into court, that would remain with the prosecutor's office. So the third-party administrator, or whichever way, I guess that remains within the county. And then when it gets to court, the appeals, that is in the prosecutor's office. Of course, including if there's, these appeals sometimes are called, you do a mandamus, and it has to be sometimes in Franklin County, or so even if it's a mandamus or other type of relief for disability, that remains in the prosecutor's office. There is a provision clarifying who the real party in interest is, because the law department is the counsel to the county. Sometimes, often, the provision, the real party you're suing is the Board of Developmental Disabilities, or the Adams Board, which is represented by the prosecutor's office, but they'll name the county just for purposes as a purpose. So it distinguishes between when the county is a real party in interest in the litigation versus when the county is just named there tangentially as a nominal party. If the county is named there tangentially as a nominal party, obviously, and the real party in interest is the party that's represented by the prosecutor's office, the prosecutor's office gets to continue the litigation. If the county is a real party in interest, of course, the law department comes in to represent the county. If there is multi-party litigation and the county's interest is a real party in interest, we divide it. They would represent the party that the prosecutor represents, the party that they represent, and the law department would represent the county if it's a real party in interest. This is the provision that I, as many of you know, was most concerned about and was, in my mind, a deal killer. So I think we need to very much have clarity on it on the record here, to make sure that the prosecutor's office and the law department and the council and the executive is everybody on the same page, which is, for purposes of appearing in court, the agreement has a provision for the designation of the law department attorneys as assistant prosecuting attorneys. APA is basically the same arrangement that happens with universities, with the Attorney General, or with the Attorney General with the U.S. Attorney's Office. The original version of the agreement that you're all familiar with that was signed said that the agreement itself does the designation for the all current and future attorneys. This got changed to say that they shall designate all current and future attorneys in the law department doing litigation for the county as assistant prosecuting attorneys unless for good cause shown. So I want to make sure that we're both on the same page, and that the council, in voting on this, everybody understands what that means and what we interpret that language to mean. That means that the designation is prompt. There's no delay in the designation. Anytime we need anybody designated, they're designated promptly. Number two, it means that the good cause shown is purely limited to that candidate. In other words, if the candidate has criminal issues or ethical issues or disbarred, that's the basis of good cause. Good cause does not encompass the need for the hiring of that lawyer or the designation of that lawyer to be in the law department. Does not mean if the prosecutor's office already has somebody who can do that work. It is not in any way, shape, or form giving the prosecutor any right whatsoever to do any management within the law department, or employee hiring or discipline or anything of that nature within the law department. All it means is if there is a provision, which basically what we call in the law defamation per se, meaning that employee that we're trying to hire has a criminal history or something that if the prosecutor were to say that's the case and would turn to be wrong, it would be defamation per se. Those are the bases on which the prosecutor can disagree on good cause.
Well,
I want to make sure that we're all on the same page on that.
We're definitely on the same page, but these are generally, this is going to happen when people are hired. So it's not going to have anything to do about what they're going to be doing because there's not going to be, there's not going to be a notification of what they're doing. Just it would be some type of a flaw with that individual. That would be good for the law department, and it would be good for the prosecutor. They want these individuals to be able to go into court with the full confidence of the prosecuting attorney as well as the law department, and that's what this is about. And we were able to reach an agreement on that, and I don't think that there should be any disagreement about that.
Well, let me just add too, because this was Prosecutor McGinney and I had a long discussion about this. It doesn't have anything to do with subject matter. It doesn't have anything to do with personnel, staffing levels. It doesn't have anything to do with that. It doesn't have to be as narrow as a criminal problem that attorney may have, but it has to do with a competency and qualification issue. And it has to be specific to the person, but there's nothing to be read into there that means that there's some there can be some blanket exemption or exception taken to employees or subject matters, or that there be an approval process that would be it would entail lengthy delay and wouldn't be done with all due speed.
Well, that's the prosecutor's understanding. So, I mean, there's no question about that.
So I just wanted to make sure that everybody, that was the clause that was
right.
That was a big deal
let me
for
just
me.
add, Mr. McGinney is his concern was that if there is a future county executive or future law director, that because they were by this process they are getting the title of assistant prosecuting attorney, that he or a future county prosecutor wouldn't want to have because that is kind of a law enforcement title, if you will, that they wanted to have some kind of check on that just in case a future county executive or law director would appoint somebody that would not merit that title because of an ethical or professional issue. And I think that was reasonable on his part, and I think this is a reasonable compromise to address it.
And my understanding is also has been clarified that there are no issues with anybody who is in the law department right now. So those, there is no good cause for those. It's for the future.
Except Majid.
That's fine with me. I
Just kidding.
No, I think it is the whole intent and this agreement is based on good faith cooperation between the offices, and I think it's very critical that we're all on the same page on this issue. The labor matters, obviously that they're in the law department except in the prosecutor's office personnel. The inspector general is represented by the law department, but she has the right, if there's a conflict or otherwise, if she wanted to seek the prosecutor's office. Sometimes, if the law department is conflicted, she can go to the prosecutor's office. Settlement of litigation, there is a very clear recognition by the prosecutor and the law department that at the end of the day, neither the prosecutor nor the law director are the people who call the shots on settlement of litigation. That is the client's decision. That is your decision and the county executive's decision. There is recognition of that and the fact that we would have to come and seek your approval in accordance with your procedures, and obviously that both offices will cooperate on those matters, and then on the matters that are also handled by the prosecutor's office, the law department will help them reach to the client. Outside legal counsel is practically the same way as the designation of the lawyers as assistant prosecuting attorneys. The law department, the executive, and the law department as a designee, and the executive and the counsel have the right to retain outside counsel. We go through our own process to select the outside counsel. It is submitted to the prosecutor. The prosecutor has a mandatory duty to promptly submit the designation to the court to get the court order, except for where's the language?
305.
No, but what's the three criteria? Unless the county prosecutor determines that there is a conflict of interest, ethical or competence reasons. So basically, again, it's not about the need for outside counsel or anything of that nature. It's purely about the selected counsel. If there is an issue with that selected counsel, the prosecutor has veto power, which gives you the ability then to select a different name, and that name would be approved. That's obviously for the retention of outside counsel under the statute where you go through the prosecutor. There's the other provision in the law under 305.14b that gives us the ability to retain outside counsel. That remains the same.
And that hasn't changed since the language that Rob Zimmerman gave us in that version that you've had. So that has not changed.
Contracts, I've explained that to you. Personnel in the offices, again, that both the law department and there's the goodwill provisions between the different offices that will work in good faith together. Obviously, collaboration between the departments, that we can designate them as lawyers when we deem it appropriate. They can designate us as lawyers on matters that are handled by them. There is the mutual designation where it makes sense to serve the county's interest. Also, the provisions for collaboration on information technology purchases. Westlaw, Lexus, we keep seeing all these contracts to try to consolidate them whichever way to work together to save money on those purchases, to work through the law department and the prosecutor's office. And the last provision, obviously, is what you've seen, is that this is a binding agreement and can only...
Do we have one that's signed?
Yes.
My understanding is there are 4 versions signed by Prosecutor McGinty.
Well, not 4 versions, one
Not 4
version,
copies.
4 copies.
But they,
Right here.
but they are actually signed.
Correct.
Okay.
I believe
So the only signatures lacking is mine, is that right?
that's correct.
Okay, and that's contingent on the vote. Mr. Zimmerman is here, who was hired by council to ensure that our interests were protected, and I just wanted to get a word from him that if he's completely satisfied with this.
Thank you, Madam President and members of council. It's been my privilege to represent you throughout this process. It was important, as I came to understand it, that the prerogative of the county council to hire its own outside counsel when needed was protected throughout this entire process. And I had the opportunity to work with some of you as well as your staff, as well as the law director and the outside counsel hired to represent the prosecuting attorney for that process. It was a collaborative process. There were a lot of ideas exchanged, a lot of different language was proposed, but ultimately what you see here is the exact language in the agreement that I believe was circulated to you late last week. So this, frankly, has not been an issue of controversy at all throughout the recent process here. I've looked at it. I believe that the language is appropriate. It cites the correct statutes. And ultimately, the county council will be able to hire its own outside counsel through the process that is set forth here in Section 6 of this agreement.
All right, thank you. Anything
Thank
else?
you.
Any questions? I think Mr. Rogers had a question.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Thank you, Madam President. I just had, Majid, you had listed out a group of the boards and commissions as well as the independent political subdivisions that will continue to be represented by the prosecutor's office. And then I also heard under the law department that the solid waste management district falls under the law department, and I'm just wondering how the solid waste district got pulled out of that overall list of other.
Basically, the membership of the solid waste district, it's historically always been the Board of Commissioners and actually the Board of Commissioners under state law are the board of the solid waste district. Under our revised county, under county charter provision, it ended up being still within the county executive and the county council, where we have the county executive, a member of council, and the director of public works. So that's an office even though technically it's a separate division, it's always been the Board of Commissioners who have been the board of the solid waste district.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Miller?
Madam President, I just have one question, but I would like to direct it to the law director and to Gary Johnson on behalf of the prosecutor and to the county executive. And my question is, given that Sections 4.01 and 5.06 of the county charter directly and expressly conflict with each other in that they assign the same duties to two different offices. My question is as to whether you see this agreement as a permanent solution, or rather do you take the attitude that sooner or later the conflict in the charter has to be corrected, and that this agreement is a temporary workaround of the conflict until the proper charter language can be created?
I would, on behalf of the prosecutor's office, I would say that, that this is what we envision to be a permanent solution. I mean, all things evolve to make things practical, but this is what we feel, unless, much of what directed this was how things work better, the functionality of it. And that was the focus of a lot of, so would things change? Not according to this, but potentially, and what this is saying is this, irregardless of what these things say, this is the agreement to divide those duties, and this is what we feel will be correct. Now, it could be that the executive comes back to you with the prosecutor 5 years from now and says we may change this or that, but I doubt that'll happen. I mean, it would only be because something isn't working the way it should be. But for right now, this I think for the future, we envision this to be a permanent agreement.
I can speak for the law department, where I initially got this idea of how to do it through an agreement. It's not an original idea. I was copying basically, I think, what it was Lee Fisher did when he was Attorney General with the universities. And so this is how universities have general counsel provisions, and those agreements have been in place since at least when Lee Fisher was Attorney General, and they've withstood the test of time. But so you could have this agreement become the permanent solution. I hope it becomes a permanent solution. It has the ability for collaboration between the offices. But again, any agreement of this nature is dependent on the good faith of how you implement it. So I think, we'll be able to see if this, especially, by definition, it's a compromise. So it's how you work those compromise provisions. If this consulting attorney thing becomes all it is duplication, and there's consulting lawyers on every case, then it becomes a costly proposition. People start questioning the need for those things. But the hope and the intent is we try to come up with a practical solution that withstands the test of time. As on the practical issue, some of this is very difficult to do in a charter because you're sort of subdividing. You're doing it on a practical basis as things change, and the hope and the intent is it does withstand the test of time.
And Councilman Miller, I understand what you're saying, but even if you had a charter amendment, there would still have to be an agreement similar to this to devise that, because you're not going to be able to put on the ballot something that says X, Y, and Z as detailed as this is, and that's what we've tried to accomplish here.
I think the Councilman wanted me to respond a little bit to it, if I'm not mistaken. I would just say briefly, I agree with what Mr. Johnson just said. Even a charter amendment, I think, could still end up resulting in litigation to define what the exact roles are. I think it could still result in litigation as to the legality of of that portion of the charter. And so I think the fact that the folks that are on a daily basis trying to make this work have reached an agreement has as much chance for permanence as a charter amendment would. And what it's going to, I know it's going to, now in the long term, could somebody revisit it? Sure, they could revisit any portion of the charter. But I think what we see, at least for at least the foreseeable future, is a working agreement and a resolution of something that had been kind of a sticking point now since we first took office. And this is an opportunity to kind of heal that process and move forward. But as Mr. McCloof said, now we've got to make sure that we all abide by the spirit of this agreement. And by the way, I didn't say it yet, but I want to express my thanks, not just to Gary Johnson, who I've known for almost 30 years, and Mr. McCloof, but there are some very strongly held opinions about the authority of prosecutors, not just in our county, by the way, but across the state. So there was a lot of people that were watching the outcome of this, and there's good faith reasons to have positions on either side of this. And I also want to thank the prosecutor, because I think he could have been more stubborn about different positions that he had. This really is a work of compromise of what you see here. And there are certain things, if Mr. McCloof and I were writing this between the two of us, that we would not have included. But there really was I think it's something that I hope the council embraces, because it's a product of true compromise.
Okay, any other comments? And we're going to, okay, Mr. Germana?
Just in case, in the future, there is a change of attitude between the prosecutor and the law director, whoever they may be, is there any language in this agreement that says how you would change it?
I think in the final that says it's binding, I think they'd have to come back to the council and, have to amend it through a written process. So let's say, for example, a future executive, a future prosecutor decides, well, we're going to do this and do this, it might be different. They'd have to come back and get your approval in that, because you're part of this agreement. And that's what's envisioned to be a three-part group moving forward. And that's as permanent as you can get with any contract, really, I guess.
And the way I look at the agreement is it's the roadmap. It sort of puts, when there is a question, where do you go? It has a place where everything happens. But within it, it envisions a lot of cooperation on a daily basis. Sometimes we may be understaffed, we need them. Sometimes they may be understaffed, they need us. It envisions cooperation on a daily basis and gives both offices the ability to work on all those matters. But the whole idea is, if there's a dispute, there's a clear place you go where the clear delineation is there.
Right, Mr. Brady?
Yeah, I'd just like to first of all commend both the prosecutor and the executive for working this through and having the flexibility to find a solution short of a conflict on the ballot. I also think that the council should remember and be proud of the fact that it was only a few weeks ago that we unanimously moved this legislation forward, and I think had something to do with putting a timeline on this, insisting on a solution being reached, which apparently we are fortunate enough to have met. And so I'm very pleased with the outcome.
Right, Mr. Green, I'm sorry, Mr. Schron.
Thank you. And I too, as Mr. Brady indicated, I'm pleased that you folks have been working together on regards to this. But the harbingers of what Mr. Akers said at the very beginning on his comments regarding this and the warnings of the MOU being no better than the MOU that works, it is not a commitment from this county or the charter. This has been 6 months plus that you've known that this is taking place. This is the very last day that we could be taking a vote on this. I'm actually offended that this is what took place and how it came to be. Mr. Brady was poignant in saying that we believe, drove you to this position. And as a result, I think that the risk is that you will drive it back the other way as soon as this MOU is potentially out there and does not satisfy where we are. So I will not be supporting this, because I'm going to be supporting the motion to support the item going on the ballot.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Chair.
I think Mr. Greenspan and then Mr. Miller.
All right, great. Thank you, Madam President. I echo the sentiments of Mr. Schron. This battle's gone on, and the executive brought up going back to an Attorney General's opinion in the early days of this government. And if I recall, the Attorney General basically said if the charter had 1 or 2 word changes, that the ability for the law director to be the civil litigator and the prosecutor to handle the criminal would have been satisfied. So the issues right now, I mean, look, this is an MOU, and it's great, and it's basically a little more than a handshake, but doesn't mean that even these current office holders might not change their mind down the road on an opinion or a provision within the MOU. Might we come back? We have some time. I'm not advocating this happen, but we've got some time to get an item on the ballot this year. I believe the deadline is first week in September. You know, if this council wants to have an emergency meeting to incorporate look, this is so much information that was given to us literally right now to digest. I find it incomprehensible to be able to do that and base an opinion to bind this county in this fashion. Now, if we want to study this and come back in 2 or 3 days, and if you're comfortable, everybody seems to be comfortable with this, and craft a charter amendment, I believe this has to be done via charter amendment. End of story. But if you're comfortable with it, you want to make it a charter amendment, have the law department, whoever, draft it, come back in 2 days and debate the item. Otherwise, I'm not supporting this, and I'm supporting the current charter amendment.
Madam President?
Yes.
I just want to clarify one thing. It's an agreement. It's about a 10-page agreement or so. The only changes that happened today were, if you added them all up, are about a paragraph and a half in 10 pages. So I just don't want the impression, this happens sometimes here, that everything was dropped on council today in a 10-page agreement. That's not correct. I'm sure you didn't mean to give that impression. And we also, it was one of the reasons why there was a representative of council that has been participating in these negotiations for quite some time. I think the law director, Mr. Johnson, would probably agree with me. It would be impossible to have a 10-page agreement reflected in a charter amendment. You would still have to have an agreement like this if you did have a charter amendment, because there are so many complexities and nuances about the way things work. There isn't a bright line between what's civil and what's not civil. So, for instance, yes, you could say, well, the prosecutor is only supposed to do criminal actions and the law director is only supposed to do civil actions. Well, what happens when there's civil litigation that arises out of criminal actions? Okay, so it's a little more complex than that. Do I wish this had been resolved a long time ago? Yes, but I think what Councilman Brady said was correct. I do believe that council helped light a fire under this situation, and it is an avoidance of going to court. One of the decisions that we made early on, even after the reason I asked for the Attorney General's opinion, was that I didn't want the new county government to start out being paralyzed by litigation. And that is the risk here. The alternative is not, well, let's just put a charter amendment on. There would be litigation over the charter amendment. Not everybody agrees. Attorney General opinions are only advisory. Not everybody agrees with the Attorney General opinion, including the Prosecuting Attorneys Association of Ohio. So there would still be litigation over it. And I just want to make that clear. I mean, one of the things that we've been trying to avoid, especially in the early years of the administration, was litigation that was going to paralyze the function of county government.
Madam President, could I?
Yeah, I think we. Go ahead. I mean,
All right, well,
we
no,
need
thank
to kind
you.
of cut this debate
No,
and move on.
and just from a historical perspective, Mike Gallagher is going to roll his eyes when I say this, but when we formed our government in Georgia, our charter was many more pages than the charter we currently have now. There oftentimes comes the ability and the necessity for specificity in a charter that may not be as simple as we want it. And if this is as complex an issue as it is, then so be it. If the Inspector General ordinance, charter amendment, needs to be as specific as it is in other states, and it's incorporated into our charter, and our charter is more than the few pages that it is now, then so be it. That's my only point. If we want to be in a position to avoid future litigation or litigation at any point, the only time that contracts come into play is to outline the understanding of the relationship, and in litigation, then let's spell out the specificity that needs to. And if the charter itself is more than 10 or 12 or 15 pages, and it's needed to provide the specificity for the government to operate clearly and with distinction, then so be it. So that's my point in bringing that forward. Not to create a charter that is so many words that are incomprehensible to understand, but words carry meaning, and if every word has to be specific in order to drive home a point and to delineate responsibility, then not to be repetitive, but so be it. And then that's the way it should be interpreted.
Mr. Miller?
I have some large reservations about the agreement. First, I think by itself, it can't be a permanent solution. The two charter sections are very clearly in conflict with each other, and a memorandum can't change or fix that. I agree that if we pass a charter amendment, there would probably still need to be an agreement, but the agreement itself is not sufficient. The second thing is that the agreement does not take advantage of home rule, with provisions where we have to designate all the law department people as prosecuting attorneys, and the prosecutor has to approve the designation of outside counsel. We can create a much cleaner version with a charter amendment. But in 30 years, the rule I've always said in deciding whether to vote for something is, number one, does it respond to a real problem that exists? And number two, is it a significant improvement over the status quo? Well, it meets those tests, so I have to vote for it. But my reservations also noted. Thank you.
I don't believe that this has been read. The item has been read, so just for the sake of mistake, let's have it read again. We've already.
Madam Chair, there's been read and a first and a second on
Okay.
motion. Mr. Schron with a second by Ms. Conwell.
Okay, so the yes vote would be a vote to authorize me to sign this agreement on behalf of the county council. A no vote would be not to authorize me to sign. And I should point out that in order for this matter to be immediately effective, it would require 8 votes. So if it passes with less than 8 votes, it would be 30 days before it would become immediately effective.
Madam President? And I don't believe there's any issue with voting yes to authorizing you to enter into this agreement and a yes on the charter amendment. I don't think those two are mutually exclusive. So given that this is a step perhaps in the right direction but doesn't go far enough in my mind to fix the structural defect of the charter, I think it's consistent. For me, I'm going to be voting for both for the reasons to put on the ballot to fix the defect and also to authorize the agreement, which incorporates, at least for now, a step in the right direction. And I want to thank my colleagues for voting this out of committee. I think it was the impetus for the parties to come together to reach an agreement. I don't think it's far enough, but I think it's farther than I thought we would be able to come. So I congratulate the parties and my colleagues, and also to the prosecutors who, this was never about their competency. It was about this defect, and it was about operating together as a partnership between the Office of the Prosecutor and our council and the executive. So I think this is fantastic, but I'm going to be voting for both the amendment and for this agreement.
Mr. Germano?
Madam Chair, to the sentiment that, some of these charter amendments don't have to be done now, I'm in support of this agreement. If we want to perfect the charter later, let's work under this partnership agreement for a year or two, and then we always could clean up in simple, clear language what's working. And I think, I can congratulate attorneys for getting together. I mean, this was all about attorneys, and you got together. So I'm for this. I would like to see eventually the charter become more clear on the division, but let's see if this works.
I ditto Mr. Germano's remarks. All right. Mr. Rogers?
Yeah,
This is going to be our longest meeting ever.
I just remember our conversations while we were discussing the potential of putting this amendment on the ballot. And the one thing that I heard consistently was that we have to do something because the way that things currently exist is not working. And so we either needed an agreement or we needed to move forward with the charter amendment. And what we have before us now is an agreement. And I think with that agreement, it gives us some time, as Mr. Germano said, to work through this agreement. And if we need to codify this agreement into the charter, we have the time to do that. But, for me, the urgency was we need to do something now to establish a partnership between the law department and the prosecutor's office. And from what we've been given, we have that now. We have something to work with and something to go forward with.
All right, Madam Clerk, will you call the roll on item R 2013-0134? As I said, a yes would be to authorize me to sign and a no would be not.
Okay, calling the roll on Resolution 2013-0184. Mr. Schron?
No.
Ms. Conwell?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Ms. Simon?
Yes.
Mr. Greenspan?
No.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Germana?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, I will sign this at the end of the meeting, I assume, because we had the 8 votes, so it'll become immediately effective. Now, let us return to the charter items, which takes us back to item, that'll be page 5, item 0164. Okay, 60, I'm sorry. Yeah, on page 5 at the top.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Resolution number 2013-0160. A resolution providing for the submission to the electors of the County of Cuyahoga amendments to Article 4, Section 4.01 and Article 5, Section 5.06 of the Charter of Cuyahoga County, allocating legal duties between the county prosecutor and the director of law to clarify the responsibilities of each office and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Shrine and seconded by Mr. Miller. Now, we've had a lot of discussion on this. Anything else anybody wants to add?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Miller.
Briefly, I just want to take this opportunity to also thank the Charter Review Commission for the long and outstanding work that they did, and also to say that the 2 charter sections remain in conflict with each other. Sooner or later, it has to be fixed. I think the amendment that we have before us is clear, simple, and effective, and would enable us to create a more cost-effective solution than we have under the agreement. And so I'm yes on the amendment. Thank you.
Yes.
I would hope that we wouldn't continue to have a conflict where none exists, and that we would defer to this agreement. I don't understand what the logic would be of putting this on the ballot, given that this agreement has been signed by the executive and by the prosecutor and by a substantial margin of the council has voted to have the council president sign it. I can't see any reason why we would put this resolution on the ballot.
All right, Madam Clerk, let's call the roll.
Calling the roll on Resolution 2013-0160. Mr. Schron?
Yes.
Ms. Conwell?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Clarification. No means it does not go to the ballot.
No would mean it would not go on the ballot and essentially would rely on the contract that we've agreed to.
No.
Mr. Rogers?
No.
Ms. Simon? Mr. Greenspan?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
No.
Mr. Germana?
No.
Mr. Gallagher?
No.
And Ms. Conley? No. The vote is 5-6. The motion is defeated.
All right.
Madam President?
Yes.
Could we take a 5-minute recess?
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you.
But that's going to be 5 minutes, like very quickly, okay? I better, no, we'll not be on the ballot. I got a call to get my dog a 5-minute recess.
Whew.